The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. It is so nice to have a blanket good afternoon across North America when you set things up according to that to work for every time zone. But thanks for taking time out of your afternoon to join us for this omni-channel marketing webinar. Um, we've had this on the docket for quite a while now, but certainly I think we all know times have changed. But I think now more than ever, it actually applies. So we're very excited to do this. And in this, you're going to see us tying this back to a symphony. So we're going to use a metaphor of a symphony to explain omni-channel marketing and work that through. And I'm not going to give all the little secrets out right now, but before I delve into that, cover a little bit of housekeeping. In general, for Ad Taxi webinars, what we like to do is very light on sales and heavy on tactics, some actionable approaches, strategy, things for you to take away and to apply to your campaigns. Of course, we want you to call us, but really our goal is to give you some arrows in the quiver on that. So with that, as you're taking notes, or if you're taking notes, we're going to be recording this and we're going to send you the recording. So if you miss something, it's coming. So we're going to be sending that out to you so you'll have it all right there. And without further ado, I've got a co-conductor for this symphony that's going to be joining me. I've got Lindsay O'Connor. She's actually going to be really conducting the whole thing. You're going to hear my voice go a little bit mute here in a minute. But Lindsay, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. I'm very excited to dive in and share all of our fun nuggets of information with everybody.
Awesome. So Lindsay's been with Ad Taxi for over 8 years. She's been 4 years with a leadership role. I don't know if this is fortunate or unfortunate, but she is a Penn State grad. We are.
Woo! Go Penn Staters. I don't know if there are any others out there.
Yeah. And she is a wife and mom of 2 daughters, and I've gotten to know these daughters because they flash around in the back of the videos when we're on video calls. So it's a lot of fun seeing that.
Yeah.
This voice that you're hearing, I'm Bob Batchelor, Director of Customer Experience here at Ad Taxi. I've been with the company for a little over 3 years, and I've been immersed in digital marketing since before Facebook launched. So really what that's saying is I'm old, getting gray, starting to suck. But I try to still enjoy the Colorado lifestyle. I was actually out for a quick bike ride before this to pump up. So I'll try to calm down a little bit on that front and hand the keys over to Lindsay right now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Hello, everybody. I'm sure a lot of us are working from home right now, so hopefully we won't have any debuts of my kids during this webinar. But as Bob mentioned, we're going to share a lot of information with you. We're going to start with just defining omnichannel to ensure that we're all on the same page on specifically what it is. Then we're going to discuss today's environment. Obviously, it's always important to understand the environment of the economy and, just where your consumers are at. But obviously, now more than ever, it's very important to be in tune. Then we're going to just talk about the structure for success, how to make sure things are set up properly. So again, kind of relating it back to the symphony, making sure that the music is set up properly to have perfect harmony, right? Then we're also going to discuss audience development, akin to filling seats of a concert hall. Then I'm going to dive into the different platforms and how to maximize those. So similarly, how you would make sure that each instrument is performing at its finest within an orchestra to get the music we're all looking for. And then finally, just talk about fine tuning and evaluating, the process and how all of these platforms really need to work to get the best results possible. And then the grand finale. So I will dive in. First and foremost, defining omnichannel. So omnichannel is essentially where we are having all of the different platforms that digital marketing has to offer and having them work so beautifully together that they produce the results that we're looking for. So again, if you think about it from a symphony standpoint, the orchestra is made up of all different types of instruments, and one of those performing on its own, yes, it sounds good, but when you put them together, it just creates such a great sound, and it's exactly what people buy tickets to hear. And so it's really important that, we have things working seamlessly together. And the things that we want these platforms to do is very simple, right? We want to deliver the right ad to the right person at the right time, in the right place, on the right device, and utilizing all of the awesome data that we have available to us to make sure that we're doing just that. And it is simple, right? Sometimes we can overcomplicate it because we can get really nerdy and in the weeds on what each platform does. But at the basics of what we want, it's this. And if you think about the way that people buy, what we know is that the purchase is never just a linear thing, right? I don't just see an ad and then go ahead and make the purchase. Unless I've already been engaged with that brand, I've been interested, or I've been in the market. A lot of times people need to do some research and be nurtured along the way before they make either a purchase or a decision to work with your business. So I'm just going to give an example. We have Susan here. She's 52. She decided to move to a different part of town, and she loves to go to see different symphonies. So she's researching the orchestra halls that are in this new neighborhood that she just moved to. And what she starts with is Google. And then a lot of times, from just a pure consumer behavior standpoint, a lot of people start with search. They start with Google in mind. And so in this example, she starts with Google, and then she's influenced throughout the way before she actually decides on the concert hall and the symphony that she wants to hear. She gets Facebook ads. She gets retargeted by display. And then finally goes back to search and looks for that very specific location that she wants to go to. And this is just kind of detailing out how one person has engaged with a brand or a concert hall in this scenario to make a purchase. And we all have that buyer journey and that buyer behavior that we need to be mindful of as marketers. But the other thing to note here is that it took multiple platforms. It wasn't just Google that helped nurture and make that sale. It wasn't just an email blast. It wasn't just display. And so this is just an example of all of these platforms really coming together and working well together. Now with that, obviously that was just an anecdotal example, but I also want to share some really specific case studies that we have that I think illustrate this omni-channel approach very nicely. So I'm going to take an auto dealer. We love our automotive guys. They are just amazing at tracking their sales, which just makes our job so much easier. And it's really nice for us to be able to say, okay, out of all the cars sold, how much of that did we actually influence? And so Auto is a very good partner, allowing us to kind of figure that out together. And so in this example here, you can see the Venn diagram was built. It depicts that we sold 115 cars out of the 154 total sold. And if you look at the circles, right, there's display, and it shows on the outer lever, that display sold 14 vehicles on its own. Search sold 6, and social sold 16. So if you look at the individual contributors, they were great, right? They sold cars. They weren't robust, but they definitely sold cars individually on their own. But think about if this auto dealer said, hey, I know search is so important, and I'm just going to throw all my money at search. You can see that he or she would have missed out on a lot of other sales. And then if you look in the middle here at 51 cars were sold based on the influence of search, social, and display all working together. So it just really depicts how important having all of these channels working together helps to influence each other and help to drive more sales than they would have gotten if they just had one singular approach. Here's another example. We have a property management company that has basically apartments for rent all across the United States. And the reason why this is such a great use case is because the website is the same. No matter what location you go to, no matter where it is, the website is the same. The user experience is the same. So all of these things, the touch points, the conversions, all of that is the same. And that's some of the biggest variables we see between different customers is depending on the website and the user experience, you can get very different results from one client to another. But because these are all the same, it was a really interesting thing to look at where some of their properties only bought search. They only wanted to do search campaigns, whereas the other group wanted to do search, social, and display. And so when we look at the results here, the properties that only did search sold or had 32 important actions in a month's time, whereas the ones that had a multi-channel approach had 109. That's a 240% increase in response because of the people who utilized the multi-touch approach. And then what's even more interesting is that the cost per action actually decreased when they had multiple channels working together. So again, it just really pays to have this omni-channel approach, having all of these things working together. It drives more results, and it's typically a lower cost per conversion in the long run. Now we want to just touch on today's environment. Again, it's just really important for us to be mindful right now of what consumers are doing, what they're feeling, what they're thinking about. And so this here, if you look at this example and look at the bullet points, there are multiple things that people have increased doing over the past 6 to 4 weeks than they weren't, necessarily doing as much before. So if you look at the top 3, it's not going to blow your mind, right? You're not going to say, wow, Lindsay, that's shocking. We all know people were streaming, right? They were using social media. They were doing online shopping. But what's important is the rate of increase that this has happened in just a very short period of time. So streaming services have gone up 42%. That's huge, right? We knew it was big. It's even more so now. Social media usage also up an extreme amount, right? 33.8%. And then online shopping. And why that's important for you to know, it's important to understand what people online, what their behaviors look like and where they're spending their time and their energy, so that way you can put your messaging in front of those people where they're spending the most amount of time. And then contrary to that too, or not contrary, but just kind of piggybacking off of that, I myself find it, really important to make sure that we're being appropriate during this time, right? How much is too much to do outreach? Is it even okay to talk to people right now and to, try to, sell or discuss your products and services? And eMarketer did a study. How are people responding to advertising right now? And the large amount of people either said they could, didn't really care one way or the other, right? They weren't completely turned off. They weren't like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. However, it skews more towards people are okay with hearing from other brands. They want to hear from you, from marketers. So not only is it okay in the marketing place right now, it's actually more so okay than not okay. So I feel like that's just such a good thing to note. I know it made me feel better as we work with clients to just ensure that it is okay to be out there right now. But being out there and having the right messaging is also really, really important. So I think, if we think about just even 4 weeks ago, one of the biggest messages out there was, we're here for you. We're doing what we can, we're supportive, we're out here, whatever it was kind of just like a feel good and not much else. I think now people's needs are shifting. And although they are so happy and they're so glad that people and businesses are out there and they're, doing their best to keep serving their community, they also want to know, what else? What are you providing from a value standpoint? How are you servicing my needs? And so I think that as we continue to be out in the marketplace, that we kind of shift that mindset, still be sensitive, but also provide more value than just we're here, right? What are you here for? How are you helping me right now? And think about your consumers, right? What audience it is that you're going after. Again, I'm a mom working from home with 2 kids. So I'm trying to be a teacher. I'm trying to do my job. And how, it might be really great to hear from, a favorite brand of mine that I like to buy from. Just say, hey, here, mom, wear new leggings today so you can just have a day off or whatever it is, right? So just kind of be mindful of the messaging. The next piece is understanding what your peers are doing. So, we kind of understand how the audience is going to respond, but what else, what are other people doing? Are they just, beating the market? Are they completely scaling back? And what we found is that, a very small percentage is suspending completely. And in some cases, they just need to. It just doesn't make sense from a business standpoint. However, a large majority of people are shifting their tactics, which is what we've seen a lot. And it's actually been really, really smart and is paying off dividends. So just a couple of examples here with shifting tactics. Some things that they're shifting to are more upper funnel. So instead of, doubling down on search, instead what they're doing is more of that brand awareness. They're moving to social more. They're putting more dollars there, or they're putting more dollars in connected TV, which is more of that branding type play. So not only are you following the trends of the market, you're also providing yourself a greater reach to prospect and build up a pipeline for when the market does come back. It's a really smart way to shift. The other thing to keep in mind too, if we think about other crises that have happened in our past, it has been shown that those who did not completely go dark and they stayed in front of their audiences the best they could during a time that was a bit tough, when the market does come back, they actually end up beating their competitors who completely went dark. So just another thing to be thinking of. From a strategy standpoint, some of the things people are doing is just really focusing on organic. So instead of, putting all of it again into like SEM or wherever else, they're putting a focus on content, making sure that content is being spread throughout multiple channels, and that their website is really intact from an SEO standpoint. They're also focusing more so on retention versus acquisition. So retention is really key. No matter what time of the year it is or whatever is happening in the economy or the world, what we find is that it is always easier to upsell or cross-sell to existing clients and to retain them than it is to acquire new. And so a lot of people are just kind of shifting their focus to those who have purchased from them in the past and really trying to continue to nurture their existing client base. Also, noting the shift in how people purchase. So people are buying in bulk, as we've seen, right, with toilet paper purchases, for instance. But people are just more so, they're just buying more right now than before. And so kind of spinning off of that mentality and that mindset right now, maybe offer your product in bulk as well. So instead of just a deal on one item, maybe it's buy 3, get 1 free type of scenario. So just kind of think about that, again, from a messaging standpoint. And then finally, just leaning into social and maximizing your budget. So we talked about how some marketers are completely getting out of the market. So that's lowering the amount of demand, right, that's in the digital marketing place right now. But if you think about the numbers that I showed, like people are spending more time online, they're doing more things digitally. So the supply has increased, the demand is decreasing, which means that the cost is going down as well. So if you're a marketer in, a social media platform, in Google, in any of it, your dollar is going to go further today than it did 2 months ago, which is really great, right? So not only are you able to stay out in front of people, you can do it at a lower cost. Now we're going to talk about structure for success, just making sure that we have the proper products, if you will, or the music to create the harmony that we're looking for. And so when you think about the consumer journey, as we described before, kind of very similar to composing music, right? You have the first movement, the second movement, the third, fourth, right? It goes through all of these different dynamics. And it's much similar to going through the nurture or the engage, nurture, and convert phase that we know people go through, right? They need to be engaged. They need to understand who you are, that awareness side. You need to nurture them along before they're going to convert. And you can do that with some really great benefits. And I described a lot of these in the case studies that I described before, but you can see there's improved conversion rates. You're going to get a larger market share and reach. You're going to have less buyer's remorse. And a really strong piece to that is because you've been nurturing and running alongside these consumers as they're doing their research, as they're trying to make their decision. You have been present and engaged throughout that entire period. So they're more familiar with you, than leading to the less buyer's remorse. And therefore, it kind of leads to greater consumer compatibility because they chose you, right? They did that research, they made that purchase, and it just kind of utilizing data and making sure you're staying in front of the right audiences have allowed you to make sure you're going after the right people who are going to now be in your wheelhouse, right? And then also brand search increases over time as well. So the more present you are, the more awareness that you're putting out there from a social media or display standpoint, people are going to be more familiar with your name. So instead of going into Google and searching for shoe stores near me, I'm going to then go and look for Bob's shoe stores near me because Bob's shoe store has shown up enough times that I'm just familiar with his name. So now we're going to look at the different platforms that are available and how they really do harmonize together and what areas that they serve. So if you look at search, social, and I would even say display to a certain standpoint, they service across all the different roles, right? They service in awareness, in intent, people who are in the consideration phase, and then also helping to drive purchases. So display isn't here on the purchase side because they definitely drive a lot of awareness, but it's remarketing specifically that helps to drive the purchase on the display end. However, social and search really can be attributed to driving purchases more so than not. So it's just really important to take note of the different areas that these platforms do service throughout the consumer journey. Next, we're going to talk about audience. It's really important that we're focused on the key people that are right for your business. Again, so you're having that, lowering the buyer's remorse, if you will. And doing so is really made up of focusing on audiences in a different way. So looking at the people you're going after from a prospecting standpoint, and then also to a remarketing standpoint, and using really intensive targeting to make sure that we're identifying the right prospects to fill your funnel and wheelhouse that can then be remarketed to. So we think about precision targeting. There's 4 levers that you can pull. The first one being first-party data. And first-party data or targeting it's your data. It's the data of people coming to your website or people who are in your CRM list or your email list, right? There's a lot of ways that you can look at your own data, your own audience segments to figure out what that first-party data looks like. And that can really fuel the fire for who you should be going after in these other, such as lookalike modeling, right? So you have your wheelhouse of your first-party data people, and then we can create lookalike models and segments off of that. And then finally, there's the third-party data targeting, which is whatever data is out there and available to us through data providers like BlueKai, LexisNexis, right? They all have this wonderful data and information that we can utilize to target people outside of your first-party data. And so those are just some of the levers you can pull. And then obviously retargeting is just it's almost a tactic that you want to make sure is employed within this targeting arena. Some other things to think about. When you're thinking about audience development, it's important to kind of note some of the things that you can think about. So demographic is an easy one, right? Male, female, age can be a really big determining factor of who fits into your wheelhouse, but also the type of messaging you might use. So for instance, if I'm a home remodeler or home repair service, I might speak to a 25-year-old female differently than I'm going to speak to a 45-year-old male, right? They're probably in different phases of their life. They're going to have different needs, and they might have, want to just hear differently from me, right? So just the messaging can change. The other things to think about are the shopping habits, their interests, geography. So where are people coming from currently, right? What's your primary market? Which a primary market is if you're a retail location, it's those in closest proximity to you. If you're not, if you're all virtual or you sell online, where are those big areas that typically buy from you or that you can ship to easily? So geography does play a really, really strong piece. The other thing to think about too that's not necessarily listed, but you can use this information to create affinity audiences. So affinity audiences, basically, I'll give this example because I just think it's hilarious. So one of our RTD guys, he showed me data for a Subaru store we were running, and they found that there was a strong relevance to people who bought Subarus also bought cat food online. And I just thought that was a really like funny, I don't know, thing that they pulled out and a data point that they discovered. But that's a great example, right? And then how can you use that not only from a targeting standpoint, but then also a messaging, right? So maybe if you're a Subaru store, you want to offer like, you know, a Chewy gift card with every purchase or something like that. You know, this just could be a way that you can kind of utilize that data to help feed your targeting and messaging. So once you have kind of that understanding of how to use data to decide on your audiences, we need to be sure that we're not just blasting the market, but we're being really smart about how we put our information and our ads out there, and then how we make decisions from that. So what I mean is we want to run our first-party audience segments, our lookalike audience segments, and our third-party audience segments. And then we want to let it run, and we want to make smart decisions as we see what those audiences do once they interact with our website. So if we're seeing that one of these audience segments are just bouncing, right? They get to the homepage and they leave very quickly. They might not be a really good group. We don't want to continue to purchase that type of audience and spend our dollars there. So what we want to look for is somebody who's engaged. An engaged site visitor is somebody who spent a minute or more on our site, or they've gone deeper than just the homepage. They're exploring, right? They're going in further to the About Us. They're looking at different products. So those are what we would consider an engaged site visitor. And that's data, right? So we're going to see how this is running, and we're going to move dollars to those who are performing best. Then we're going to look at retargeting. So as people go into the funnel of our website, we want to set up our retargeting lines very differently. You don't want to just order retargeting or have a retargeting pixel that lives on every single page of your website and it's the same ad going to all the people. Instead, you want to be very smart and strategic. So setting up people who are engaged site visitors, like I described before, you know, maybe they got to the second page or they've gone to the About Us, you know, not anything too granular. You want to retarget them, yes, stay in front of them with a more general message. So, you know, instead of, you know, why buy, it's why buy from me, and give them a reason to come to you versus, you know, just buying the product or service as a whole. And then look at, you know, if they go a little bit further down. So in the case of a e-commerce store, maybe if they got into very specific products and, you know, they have even gotten something as far as, you know, to the cart, you're going to want to have a different message going to those people, right, who have put something in their cart than those who have just looked at a product. And then also somebody who's put in their credit card information or started filling out their shipping form and then abandoned that, right? So every level of intent, as it gets further and further, you want to adjust your bids and as well as your messaging to make sure that you're fully engaging and nurturing these people back to where they left off. And just some more points on retargeting, because it's just so important. We see the conversions are extremely high. And these are just some stats kind of supporting that. You know, website visitors who are retargeted with display ads are 70% more likely to convert. And it has just been proven and true with pretty much every campaign we've run. And 91% of marketers use retargeting found this perform the same or is better than search, email, and other display ads. So again, I won't read all of these to you, but I just think it's really important that you note how important retargeting is, and also having a really smart strategic strategy around retargeting will help your dollars go further, because it typically is a little bit more expensive to bid on a retargeting ad than a prospecting ad.
Hey, Lindsay,
now we want to just look at,
I'll give you a second of a break to breathe. If you go back to that other slide, the other thing about retargeting, you know, and why we're partially so bullish on it, is if you look in this background picture, you've got a guy on the mobile phone, you've got looks like mother and daughter, maybe sister, brother, can't really tell in that picture. But anyway, they're on a tablet. We've got the TV on. Retargeting can happen across a device as well. So as people move from one device to the next, very critical to be reaching them across those different devices. And that can all be set up as well. So just kind of add to a little bit of there.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, good call, Bob. Yeah, very, very good point. And it's something that, again, that's another piece, like cross-device targeting is just so important, just in general. So some other things to kind of sum this up together in one slide, if you will, is as we look at the people who come into the website, how to kind of categorize them. So those who come to your website and let's say they bounce, they just get to the homepage and leave, we want to ignore those people in general. So we don't want to create a ton of lookalike models off of, homepage leavers, right? We don't want to retarget those people because they just aren't engaged. Instead, we want to look at those engaged site visitors, right? And we want to build our prospecting models and our prospecting data off of those types of people. And then finally, as they get down more closer to conversion points on our website, that's where we want to build out that remarketing strategy that I illustrated a couple of slides ago. It's really important to make sure that you're being super smart and efficient with your dollars and building out these different frequency and recency bids for remarketing. So an example too of focusing on engaged site visitors and how important it is to bid properly on that upper funnel prospecting as well. This was an auto dealer that we worked with, and we're talking to the president about digital marketing, and I think this particular gentleman wasn't fully digitally savvy at the time, and he obviously was asking us to just drive more price quotes, right? It's like that's what I want, because typically when they get a price quote, they're going to get the sale, or that's the biggest indicator to a sale. And we did it, right? We're like, okay, we'll drive all the traffic and bid our prospecting lines towards those who are, filling out a price quote. And we'll continue to build lookalike models, all of that, off of people filling out price quotes. And what we found is that as we were bidding towards people, filling out the price quote, we just were not getting the traction that we wanted. And so you can look here where this big blue line is. We shifted focus and we said, all right, look, before somebody can fill out a price quote, they have to look at what's called a VDP, which is a vehicle description page. So for instance, when I just bought a car, a couple of years ago, I was looking at different SUVs, and the one that I really wanted it had 7 seats, it was black, it was gray, I loved it. That's a vehicle description page. That is a very singular, specific car. And I had to look at that before I filled out the price quote. And so what we found is that as we were driving more people towards that action and built lookalike models and predictive modeling off of that, we ended up driving more people to the VDP page visits, which then in turn drove more price quotes, which is awesome, right? And it just makes sense. But a lot of times I think that us either as marketers or maybe our bosses who are a little bit further removed, they just tell you the end goal that they want without thinking through how you actually have to get there. So it's really important that you go through your website and see what steps people need to take before they get to that main conversion point you're looking for. And if you're not getting the conversions now, maybe shift, go a little bit more upper funnel and start driving more upper funnel activity, and you'll start seeing that lower funnel conversion come through. So now we're going to focus on the different platforms that are available to us. So we've looked at the prospecting strategies and how we need to be remarketing differently. But now we're going to look at that per platform, which is really, really important. So search, for instance, you want to break out prospecting and remarketing. And here are some of the best tactics you can take. And I am going to warn you, these next 2 slides are very, very text heavy, but it has really great content. So like Bob had mentioned earlier on, we will send this out. So feel free to either take a screenshot or when we have the recording, you can write these down later. But some of the most important things here on the search side from a prospecting standpoint is, always focus on having really high impression share. So we would consider our success being around 80-85% for impression share. And basically impression share in the marketplace is that you're showing up, your text ad is showing up, 80 to 85% of the time when somebody's doing a search as it relates to your business. And the reason why we go to 85% versus 100% is because it's very much impossible, frankly, to go to 100% in search. I mean, it's just, you can never predict how many people are going to search for something in a day or week or a month. We have enough data to make educated guesses, but that's a really solid number to be within. And you want to do that within your primary and secondary market. So I was talking a little bit about primary markets being, if you're a retail location, an area that's closest to you from a geography standpoint, or it's a market that you have a really strong hold in, right? And then the secondary is that market that's important to us and you don't want to forget about, but they don't really fit as primary. They're not, they're not our bread and butter, they're not our solid, but we don't want to forget about them. So that's an important piece. Also making sure that you sync GA and Google Ads together so you can track conversions. It's really important because it's going to feed how you should be optimizing and feed the success and performance of how your campaign is going. You want to make sure that you're also looking at that desktop and mobile strategies differently, so segment them out separately so you can bid and adjust, your bid adjustments accordingly. Then from a retargeting standpoint, you want to make sure that you exclude branded from retargeting. Like I mentioned before, retargeting is more expensive. And so if somebody's going and looking for branded ads, you don't want to pay for that on the retargeting side. It just isn't going to make sense. You also want to make sure that you change up the text to focus on why the user should buy from you. So like I think I mentioned this earlier with the prospecting and remarketing. On the prospecting side, you want to just say why buy in general, but on retargeting is why buy from you. What makes you better than your competitors? What is something solid that's going to help you stand apart? And so those are some really good messaging to have within retargeting. Now, when we look at prospecting on social media, the best thing I think that social brings to the table are those custom audiences. And actually, Google and Bing have also followed suit more recently, but custom audiences are so important on their prospecting side. Making sure that you're layering in that offline data, such as your CRM, or if you have email lists, making sure that you're pulling that in and utilizing that to create audience segments. Also, day partying. So that's something that sometimes we forget to think about when it comes to social media. But looking at, when people are engaging, and you can see the insights on your back end on like Facebook and Instagram, what time of day people are engaging with you more times than not, and you can adjust your bid structure accordingly. And then on the retargeting side, remarket to that highest value visitor. So somebody who has gotten further into your website, or they've looked at a really high ticket item that you want to sell, whatever it is, or they've abandoned the cart. Those are your high value visitors. So make sure that you're retargeting to them. And then also, this is an important point. Engage users who haven't converted with a Facebook lead ad. So it's a little weirdly worded here, but what a Facebook lead ad does on the prospecting side is, if you're a business that is driving towards leads in general, it's a great tactic to use. And if you're not familiar, it's basically a form that is automatically filled out on Facebook on your behalf. But what we found is that you typically want to set up a Facebook lead ad campaign and have about 30% of your budget go there, 70% go to the rest of the campaign, just kind of like a general branding or whatever it is you want to do on the prospecting side. Then from a remarketing standpoint, if you served them a lead ad and they didn't fill out the form or they didn't convert, retargeting those people with a different message is a really, really smart thing to do. So again, if leads are important to you, capturing information, it's a great thing to try. I wouldn't go all in on it, but then also use this remarketing component as a strategy. Then from a programmatic standpoint, building audiences that have that intent to purchase is really key. So again, you can use a lot of the same, create custom audiences, use CRM data. You can use a lot of those same tools to figure out which audience you should go after. So that's really layering in your first party data. I think the most important point here is the very last one, which is target audiences and not websites. We talk to people all the time that say, hey, Lindsay, can you get me on whatever, CNN, Fox News, CNBC, right? I'm going to name all of the things to be like biased, but Anyway, they want to buy specific websites versus just going after the user. And I understand from a brand safety standpoint, that is completely, we get it. It is really important to note, though, that we have we have several layers of brand safety tactics in place to ensure that we're serving ads on really robust and credible websites. But regardless, people want to go after these. The end goal is to find the person that's going to convert, right? Or the person that's going to buy from you. So, why do we necessarily care what websites they're on? And I think this is such an important point, is to really focus on the audiences versus where you think they go and where you think they might be. And then from a remarketing standpoint, making sure that you're aligning with the site behavior. So really that structure I talked about earlier on, adjusting your bids based on where they are on your website. And then finally, we're going to talk about performance and how to fine tune your campaign for the best performance overall. And make sure, number one, you're focusing on the metrics that matter. Another thing that we see a lot of times is that people want to just talk about click-through rates or impressions, clicks, what have you. And although clicks are really, impressions are important on the search side, it's not necessarily as applicable specifically with display. You want to make sure that you're layering in view-through data, which is really important. And also looking at, are these people converting? Again, it doesn't matter if somebody's clicking on ads all day long. If they don't convert and they don't do anything that's important to your business, they're not really valuable. So make sure that you're looking at that user behavior, again, once they get to your site. Not relying on last click attribution. That's a really big tool. We've done seminars in the past around attribution modeling, and I'll give you an example in a minute. But last click just doesn't tell that whole story. Again, it only is saying whatever last ad was served that you clicked on is the thing that drove the sale. And again, if you think back to Susan, who purchased the ticket to a symphony, a lot of touch points happened. Yes, search was the last thing she did, but Facebook, display, email, all of that had an influence on her going to wherever she went. Clearly define success, to make sure that you're very clear on what is success to you and why it's successful, and how everyone who has a stake in this digital marketing is all on the same page, whether it's your internal team or your agency or whoever you're working with. Break it all down into an effective CPA. So from an omnichannel standpoint, again, you're going to have a lot of different metrics and data to look at. So pulling that all in under an eCPA will help you kind of give it a level baseline, if you will. And then track success with third-party platforms, such as Google Analytics is, the top one that people typically utilize. And so this is an example with NGA, and they wanted to use this because this is something that a lot of people utilize when measuring success. And one of the biggest things is to note is that Google Analytics by default will always report on last click attribution models. So it's really only going to pipe in something that drove an action on a click, okay? And that's really key. And so a way around that is also looking at assisted conversions. So if you can see these numbers, okay, here's an example for social media. This is showing a last click drove $24,000 worth of sales and revenue for this client. And that seems okay, right? That's not a bad thing. However, when you look at the assisted conversions, this had an influence into driving the sales from another, click. $33,000 can be attributed to that, which is huge. So we weren't looking at the assist. We didn't look at, how social influenced people coming into the site. We would not maybe think social performed as great as it actually did when you add these two things together. So it's really important to make sure that, one, you either, dig into how GA is measuring. You can easily change within even search the attribution model, but also make sure in GA that you're looking at the assisted conversions. And then finally, the grand finale. So just kind of pulling all of this together, much like a symphony, the composition plus having a full house and the right instruments working together creates that moving performance that we all go, to pay to see. And it's very similar with digital marketing, making sure you have that full funnel approach, the right audiences, and using your platforms that are available properly equals a successful marketing campaign. So it's a really great way, again, thinking about, all of this together. It's just such a great way to make sure that you're being effective with your marketing, you're collecting the right types of data and making the right decisions. And again, it's going to pay dividends from a standpoint of reaching more people, getting more results at a lower cost. And then just a final piece here, just about AdTaxi, because I do think, as you just listened to me, it's really important to understand the credibility here. My mom always told me to surround myself with people I wanted to be like and the best and the brightest. And we do that within AdTaxi, right? We're surrounded by some of the best out there, and they really help to drive us and make us smarter day in and day out. And, we're able to kind of bring all of those learnings to you guys. And then finally, a lot of questions we get when we talk to people or we've done these seminars, particularly in person, they have questions. They want to know more. And so if you would like us to dive into your current strategy or what you're doing, or if you need any advice on anything I covered, please reach out. We are more than happy to do that and really, see if there's a fit for us to help you take things to the next level or just give you advice on how to move forward. So with that, I will turn it back over to Bob just to wrap up. But I thank you all so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. That was fantastic as always. As I mentioned earlier, the recording will be coming out, and as in the previous slide, we'll have a link if you would like more information for us to, consult with you and, do an audit of your campaign. That's there. Stay tuned for more AdTaxi webinars. We continue to do these, usually 1 or 2 a month, and that can be found on our website, adtaxi.com/events. And so I appreciate everybody's time. Certainly the most person, well, not the most, but a person that I very much appreciate is Lindsay. Thank you very much, Lindsay. And
thank you.
I think we can wrap it up. There was one question we answered online, and I think we're good to roll. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.